Jacob's story is not just an ancient tale. It's an epic journey of faith, deception, and redemption that still echoes through the ages. But here's the question: how can God use imperfect, even flawed people to accomplish His divine plan? In a world where cunning often triumphs over integrity, Jacob's life forces us to face uncomfortable truths about human nature and about justice and mercy. Are you ready to discover the surprising origin of a chosen nation? Let's step into the story. Genesis 25:21 introduces us to a couple in deep distress. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren. The Lord answered his prayer, and Rebekah became pregnant. For 20 long years, Rebekah carried the silent burden of barrenness, something seen as a curse in ancient times. Can you imagine the weight of despair? The promise given to Abraham seemed distant, even broken, and yet God finally answered. But His answer didn't come without complications. Genesis 25:22-23 tells us, "The babies jostled each other within her, and she said, 'Why is this happening to me?' So she went to inquire of the Lord. And God's response was staggering. 2 nations are in your womb. One will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." From the very womb, a divine reversal was set in motion. The natural order was overturned. The firstborn would not lead. Instead, the younger would rise. Doesn't that sound like a pattern we've seen before? God constantly reshaping human conventions, rewriting expectations. Then came the dramatic birth. Genesis 25:24-26 describes it. Twin boys. The first, red and hairy, named Esau. The second, born grasping his brother's heel, Jacob. Even at birth, his grasp hinted at a destiny marked by struggle, ambition, and cunning. Their differences only sharpened with time. Esau grew into a rugged hunter, the embodiment of strength and masculinity. Jacob preferred the tense, quieter, more calculating. Isaac favored Esau. Rebekah loved Jacob, and from this favoritism, the seeds of division were planted. Doesn't history still teach us the danger of loving children unequally? The real turning point came in what looked like a small, ordinary moment, but it changed everything. Genesis 25:29-34 recounts the infamous stew. Esau, exhausted and hungry, begged Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew." Jacob's reply? Cold, calculated. "First, sell me your birthright." Esau swore an oath and gave it up. For a bowl of lentils, he traded honor, heritage, and destiny. It's shocking, isn't it? Esau's impulsiveness, his hunger for the moment, outweighed the value of his inheritance. And Jacob? Sharp, strategic, even manipulative, but fully aware of what the birthright meant. Here, in one meal, their futures shifted forever. That meal of lentil stew became more than just food. It became a symbol of Esau's recklessness and Jacob's opportunism. The Bible does not give us a clear moral judgment here. Instead, it lets the story unfold, showing how this single decision would shape not only the brothers' destinies, but the future of nations. The birthright wasn't just about material inheritance. It carried spiritual weight, the blessing of Abraham's line, and the sacred responsibility of leading the family. By despising his birthright, Esau revealed something crucial, a lack of foresight, and a disregard for the divine promises given to his ancestors. Jacob, on the other hand, saw its value. For him, gaining the birthright was only the first step. Questionable, yes, but his determination to secure God's blessings would define his entire life. And isn't that the tension we feel in Jacob's story? human flaws clashing with divine purpose. This episode sets the stage for what comes next. Jacob's ambition would lift him to great heights, but also plunge him into conflict and danger. Genesis 27:1-4 draws us into a critical moment. Isaac, now old and nearly blind, calls for his eldest son. "My son, yes, father, I am old and do not know the day of my death. Take your weapons, go to the field, hunt game for me, prepare the food I love and bring it to me. Then I will bless you before I die." Do you feel the weight of this? Isaac's blessing wasn't just a tradition. It was a prophetic act, carrying power to shape the destiny of generations. His choice of Esau shows his ongoing preference for the elder son, despite the birthright being sold years earlier. Perhaps Isaac didn't know, or perhaps he refused to acknowledge it. Either way, his plan set in motion a chain of events that would split the family. Genesis 27:5-10 introduces Rebekah's bold counterplan. She overhears Isaac's words and turns immediately to Jacob. "I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Now listen carefully. Go to the flock, bring me 2 choice young goats, so I can prepare the food your father loves. Then take it to him, so he may bless you before he dies." Her scheme was daring, even dangerous. She wasn't just opposing her husband's will, she was risking her favorite son's future. Why did she do it? Maybe she remembered God's prophecy. The older will serve the younger. Maybe she truly believed Jacob was more fit to lead. Or maybe it was simply favoritism taken to its extreme. But once the plan began, there was no turning back. Genesis 27:11-17 paints the scene vividly. Jacob hesitates. "But my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am smooth. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be deceiving him and bring down a curse, not a blessing." Rebekah's reply is chilling in its determination. "My son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say." She takes Esau's best clothes, dresses Jacob in them, and covers his smooth skin with goat hides. She hands him the food, the very kind Isaac loved, and sends him in to deceive his dying father. The lengths of this deception are staggering. Imagine the weight Jacob must have felt in that moment, fear of being caught, but also the lure of securing the blessing. And then comes the encounter. Genesis 27:18-29, the room thick with tension. Jacob approaches. "My father." "Yes, who are you, my son?" Isaac asks. "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat so that you may bless me." Isaac, suspicious. "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" Jacob answers, invoking even God's name. "The Lord your God gave me success." Isaac isn't convinced. "Come near, so I can touch you, to know whether you really are Esau or not." The tension is almost unbearable. Each word, each step closer, risks everything. Will Isaac discover the truth? Or will the lie hold long enough to secure the blessing? Isaac remained suspicious. His ears told him it was Jacob, but his sense of touch told him it was Esau. Genesis 27:22-23 records. Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. So he blessed him. What a moment of tension. Isaac's senses were divided. His hearing said one thing, his hands said another. And yet, trusting touch over voice, he proceeded. Have you ever wondered how often we too trust the wrong sense, the wrong instinct, and it changes everything? Then came the blessing, powerful, poetic, irreversible. Genesis 27:27-29 tells us Isaac smelled the clothes of his son and declared, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field the Lord has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. Cursed be those who curse you, and blessed be those who bless you." This was no ordinary blessing. It promised prosperity, power, and spiritual favor. And the words, "Be Lord over your brothers," echoed God's prophecy given before the twins were even born. The younger would rule, but just as Jacob slipped away, Esau returned. Genesis 27:30-35 captures the moment of shock. Esau entered with his food, eager, ready for his father's approval. "My father, sit up and eat, so you may bless me." Isaac trembled violently. "Who are you?" "I am Esau, your firstborn." And then the devastating truth. "Who was it, then, that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him. And indeed, he will be blessed." Imagine the silence in that room, the trembling of an old father who realized he had been deceived. And yet, he knew the blessing stood. It was not just a father's wish, it was a prophetic decree that could not be undone. Esau's cry pierced the air, bitter, heartbreaking. "Bless me too, my father." But Isaac could only say, "Your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing." Genesis 27:36-38 reveals Esau's anguish. "Isn't he rightly named Jacob? This is the second time he has taken advantage of me. He took my birthright, and now he has taken my blessing. Do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me too." And Esau wept aloud. It is here that Esau finally grasps what he had lost. The birthright, once despised, now seemed priceless. His tears reveal regret, but regret that came too late. Isaac did give Esau a blessing, but it was nothing like Jacob's. Genesis 27:39-40. Records. "Your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword, and you will serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from off your neck." This was a future marked by struggle, not abundance, a destiny of conflict and servitude, yet with the faint hope of eventual freedom. But Esau's sorrow quickly turned to rage. Genesis 27:41 tells us, "Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, 'The days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob.'" This is no sibling rivalry, it's a plan for murder. Esau's fury burns hot, and Jacob's life is suddenly in grave danger. Rebekah, once again, takes swift action. Genesis 27:42-45 describes her warning. "Esau is planning to kill you. Now, my son, flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay with him until your brother's fury subsides. Why should I lose both of you in one day?" Her words reveal not just strategy, but fear. She knows that if Esau kills Jacob, she will lose both sons, one to death, the other to blood guilt. And so, Jacob flees. Genesis 28:1-5 marks the beginning of a new chapter. Isaac, now resigned to the reality, calls Jacob and blesses him once more. "Do not marry a Canaanite woman. Go at once to Paddan Aram, to the house of your mother's father Bethuel. Take a wife there from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful, and increase your numbers until you become a community of peoples. May he give you and your descendants the blessing given to Abraham. Jacob leaves his home, carrying both the weight of deception and the mantle of divine promise. His story of cunning and blessing is far from over. In fact, it has only just begun. Isaac's second blessing confirmed what God had already ordained. He now spoke with full awareness, sending Jacob away with instructions not just for marriage, but for destiny. Genesis tells us Isaac commanded, "Do not marry a Canaanite woman. Go instead to Paddan Aram, to the house of your mother's father Bethuel. Take a wife there from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful. May he give you and your descendants the blessing given to Abraham, so that you may take possession of the land where you now live as a foreigner, the land God gave to Abraham." This is crucial. Isaac, deceived yet resigned, accepts God's will. He knowingly passes the covenant blessing to Jacob, sealing his role as heir. With this, Jacob departs, leaving behind a fractured family, an enraged brother, and stepping into the unknown. But his journey to Haran is more than escape. It is the beginning of transformation, the path that will turn Jacob, the deceiver, into Israel, the father of 12 tribes. Genesis 28:10-11 brings us to Jacob's first night on the road. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. Can you picture it? Jacob, alone for the first time, far from the protection of home, with only a stone for a pillow, vulnerable, exposed, hunted. And it is in this very place of fear and fragility that God chooses to reveal himself. The dream is unforgettable. Genesis 28:12-15 records Jacob's vision, a stairway stretching from earth to heaven, with angels ascending and descending. And above it stood the Lord. "I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go. I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I promised you." This moment is breathtaking. Jacob, the schemer, the fugitive, encounters divine grace. Heaven touches earth. God assures him, "I am with you." Jacob awakes, shaken. Genesis 28:16-22 captures his response. "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it." How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. He takes the stone pillow, sets it as a pillar, anoints it with oil, and names the place Bethel, house of God. Then Jacob makes a vow. If God will be with him, provide food and clothing, and return him safely, then the Lord will be his God. He even promises to give a tenth of all he receives. For the first time, Jacob begins to make God his own, not just the God of his fathers, but his God. This is the turning point of faith. Genesis 29 shifts the story to Haran. Jacob arrives at a well where 3 flocks wait for the stone covering the water to be rolled away. He greets the shepherds. "My brothers, where are you from?" "From Haran," they reply. He asks, "Do you know Laban?" "Yes," they answer. And here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep. The timing is divine. Rachel appears, and Jacob's heart is instantly stirred. He sees her, approaches boldly, rolls away the heavy stone single-handedly, and waters her flock. Then, Overcome with emotion, he kisses her and weeps. What a moment! The weary fugitive now stands at the well of destiny. Just as Abraham's servant found Rebekah at a well, now Jacob meets Rachel, the woman who will capture his heart. Genesis 29:13-14 describes Laban's welcome. He rushes to meet Jacob, embraces him, and brings him home. At first, it seems like a joyful family reunion, but beneath the hospitality lies Laban's calculating mind. Soon, the conversation turns practical. "Because you are my relative, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me your wages." Jacob needs no time to think. His love for Rachel is already consuming. Genesis 29:16-20 tells us, Rachel was beautiful, and Jacob loved her, so he makes a bold proposal. "I'll work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel." 7 years of labor, all for love, and Scripture says, they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. But then comes the cruel twist. Genesis 29:21-25 tells us of the wedding feast. Jacob expects Rachel, but in the darkness, Laban sends Leah instead. By morning, the deception is revealed. When morning came, there was Leah. Jacob confronts Laban. "What is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me?" Do you feel the irony? The deceiver is deceived. Jacob tricked his blind father. Now, in the blindness of night, he is tricked. His own words echo Esau's pain. "Why have you deceived me?" Laban answers coldly, "It is not our custom to give the younger daughter before the older. Finish Leah's bridal week, and then you may have Rachel also, in return for another 7 years of work." And so Jacob agrees. He marries Rachel after a week, but binds himself to 14 years of labor. He loves Rachel more than Leah, and the tension of a divided household begins. Jacob, who once schemed his way to blessings, now finds himself bound by another man's schemes. His story of struggle, love, and rivalry is only beginning, and so are the lessons God will teach him. Jacob's story takes a darker turn, a situation charged with rivalry, betrayal, and family tension. Jacob's preferential love for Rachel mirrors the favoritism of his own parents, perpetuating the same cycle of conflict. And soon, children are born into this environment of rivalry. Genesis 29:31-35 and 31-24 describe the turbulent birth story of Jacob's sons. Leah gives birth to Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Rachel, unable to conceive, gives her servant Bilhah to Jacob, and she bears Dan and Naphtali. Leah responds by giving her servant Zilpah, who bears Gad and Asher. Later, Leah conceives again and gives birth to Issachar and Zebulun. Finally, Rachel conceives and gives birth to Joseph. Each child's name carries the weight of the mother's emotions: longing, envy, hope, desperation. Can you imagine the tension inside this household? Every birth feels like a contest. Every son a reminder of favoritism and rivalry. Yet amid the drama, God's promise begins to unfold. Jacob, once a single man on the run, is now surrounded by a large family, flawed, divided, but destined to become a nation. But Jacob's journey is far from over. Genesis 30:25-28 shows his growing restlessness. After Rachel gives birth to Joseph, Jacob says to Laban, "Send me on my way so I can go back to my homeland." He longs for freedom, but Laban resists, desperate to hold on to the man who brought him blessings. Laban even admits, "I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you." Here's the twist. Jacob makes an unusual deal. He asks only for the speckled and spotted animals from the flock, a request that seems to put him at a disadvantage. But what looks like weakness turns into strategy. Through selective breeding and perhaps divine intervention, Jacob's wealth grows enormously. His prosperity sparks resentment. Genesis 31, 1-3 tells us that Laban's sons begin to whisper, "Jacob has taken everything that belonged to our father." Suspicion spreads, and Laban's attitude toward Jacob changes. At this breaking point, God speaks, "Return to the land of your ancestors, and I will be with you." But how do you leave when you've been tied down for 20 years? Jacob carefully plans his departure, secretly explaining to Rachel and Leah why they must go. Both wives agree, admitting their father treated them unjustly. Together, they escape with their children, livestock, and possessions. Yet Rachel makes a fateful decision. She steals her father's household gods. Why? Was it superstition, a way to cling to her family roots, or an act of quiet rebellion? Whatever the reason, this single choice adds a dangerous layer of conflict. When Laban discovers Jacob has fled, the chase begins. For 7 days he pursues Jacob until he catches up in the hill country of Gilead. The confrontation is inevitable. But before it unfolds, God warns Laban in a dream. Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. The meeting is tense. Laban accuses Jacob of deceit, demanding his household gods back. Unaware of Rachel's theft, Jacob defiantly declares his innocence and even invites Laban to search everything. Rachel, hiding the idols beneath her, cleverly avoids detection by pretending she cannot rise due to her menstrual period. Once again, deception shapes the story. Frustration boils over, and Jacob unleashes a passionate speech. "For 20 years I worked for you. I bore the losses myself. I endured heat by day and cold by night. You changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my fathers had not been with me, you would have sent me away empty-handed." Jacob's words cut through the years of manipulation. Finally, a covenant is made. They pile stones as a witness to their agreement, a symbolic line that neither will cross. With a final farewell, Laban kisses his daughters and grandchildren goodbye and returns home. Jacob leaves Haran not as the deceiver who once fled in fear, but as the patriarch of a growing nation. His next steps will test him even more. Genesis 32, 1-2 records a mysterious encounter. Jacob meets angels on the road. He names the place Mahanaim, the camp of God, a divine reminder that he is not alone. But this vision is also a warning, because ahead lies the greatest test of his life, facing Esau. News arrives, Esau is coming, and he's bringing 400 men. Jacob is terrified. He divides his family into 2 camps, thinking, if Esau attacks one, the other may escape. Fear grips him. But then, Jacob does something he rarely does. He prays. His words are raw and humble. "I am unworthy of all the kindness you have shown. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother." He reminds God of his promises, yet admits his own weakness. Still, Jacob doesn't rely only on prayer. He prepares gifts, herds of animals, sent ahead in waves to appease Esau. It's a strategy of both humility and desperation. The night before the encounter, Jacob faces a battle unlike any before. Genesis 32, 22-32 describes a strange, mystical struggle. Alone in the dark, Jacob wrestles with a mysterious man until daybreak. Who was this figure? An angel? A divine manifestation? The man wounds Jacob's hip but cannot defeat him. Jacob refuses to let go until he is blessed. Then comes the life-changing moment. Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. Jacob emerges with a limp, scarred, but transformed. No longer the trickster, he is Israel, the one who wrestles with God. And then, the moment he has dreaded for 20 years finally arrives. Genesis 33 describes it. Jacob looks up and sees Esau with 400 men. He bows 7 times, humbling himself before his brother. Tension hangs in the air. But instead of vengeance, something astonishing happens. Esau runs to meet Jacob, embraces him, kisses him, and they both weep. What kind of grace is this? The brother who once vowed to kill him now forgives. Reconciliation triumphs where rivalry once ruled. Jacob insists Esau accept his gifts, saying, "Please accept the blessing brought to you, for God has been gracious to me." And then they part ways in peace. It feels like the end of Jacob's struggles, but his story is not done. He builds an altar in Shechem, declaring, "El Elohe Israel," God, the God of Israel. But just as peace begins to settle, tragedy will strike again through the story of his daughter Dinah in Genesis 34. When Jacob finally arrived in Egypt, the long-awaited reunion between father and son took place. Genesis 46:29 narrates, Joseph had his chariot made ready and went to Goshen to meet his father Israel. As soon as Joseph appeared before him, he threw his arms around his father and wept for a long time. This moment of deep emotion captures the years of sorrow, longing, and hope finally resolved in a tearful embrace. Jacob, who had believed Joseph dead for so many years, could now see with his own eyes that his beloved son was alive and exalted in a foreign land. Pharaoh himself welcomed Jacob's family, offering them the land of Goshen, one of the best regions in Egypt. This act of generosity not only secured their survival during the years of famine, but also fulfilled God's plan to preserve his chosen people in a foreign land until the appointed time of deliverance. Jacob's blessing over Pharaoh, recorded in Genesis 47:7, is a striking reversal. Though Pharaoh was the most powerful ruler of the ancient world, the aged patriarch stood before him as the bearer of divine promises and extended a blessing. As Jacob's years in Egypt passed, his role as patriarch remained central. Genesis 48-49 describes some of the most significant scenes in his later life, the blessings over his children and grandchildren. In Genesis 48, Jacob blesses Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, effectively adopting them as his own and granting them an inheritance equal to that of his other sons. In a symbolic act, Jacob crosses his hands, placing his right hand on Ephraim, the younger, and his left on Manasseh, the elder. Joseph protests, but Jacob insists, declaring that the younger will surpass the elder. This echoes the recurring biblical theme of God's unexpected choice, the younger rising above the older, as seen in Jacob's own story. Genesis 49 presents Jacob's prophetic blessings over his 12 sons. These blessings are both poetic and deeply symbolic, outlining the future destinies of the tribes of Israel. Reuben, the firstborn, loses his place of honor because of his sin with Bilhah. Simeon and Levi are rebuked for their violence in Shechem. Judah, however, is exalted. Jacob declares, "The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nations shall be his." This prophecy foreshadows the rise of the Davidic dynasty and ultimately the Messianic line. Through these blessings, Jacob not only evaluates the character of his sons, but also speaks prophetically of their tribes' futures, shaping the course of Israel's history. It is a moment that connects the personal struggles of one family to the larger story of God's redemptive plan for the world. The final chapter of Jacob's life is recounted with solemnity. In Genesis 49:29 through 33, Jacob gives instructions concerning his burial. He does not want to remain in Egypt, but to be buried in the cave of Machpelah, the burial place of Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, and where he himself had buried Leah. This final request reflects Jacob's enduring connection to the land of promise and his faith in God's covenant. Genesis 50 describes Jacob's death and funeral. When Jacob breathed his last, Joseph threw himself on his father, wept over him, and kissed him. Joseph then ordered the physicians to embalm Jacob, a process that took 40 days, after which a period of national mourning was observed in Egypt. Remarkably, even Pharaoh permitted a grand funeral procession to Canaan, where Jacob was buried with his ancestors. This event underscores Jacob's significance, not only as a patriarch of Israel, but also as a respected figure in Egypt. The conclusion of Jacob's story sets the stage for the next great movement in the biblical narrative, the story of Israel in Egypt, their eventual enslavement, and the rise of Moses as their deliverer. Jacob's life, filled with struggle, deception, reconciliation, and divine encounters, becomes the foundation for the history of an entire people. His transformation from Jacob, the deceiver, to Israel, the one who wrestles with God, illustrates how God works through human weakness to accomplish his purposes. In the end, Jacob's legacy is not only in the 12 tribes that bear his sons' names, but also in the enduring truth that God's promises remain steadfast, regardless of human failure or frailty. His journey reminds us that faith is often forged through trials, and that the blessings of God can flow through lives marked by imperfection, struggle, and grace. In Genesis 46:29-30, we finally witness one of the most emotional reunions in Scripture. Joseph prepared his chariot and went to Goshen to meet his father. The moment he appeared, Joseph threw his arms around Jacob and wept for a long time, and Jacob, overwhelmed with relief, said, "Now I am ready to die, since I have seen for myself that you are still alive." This reunion marked the beginning of Jacob's final chapter. Genesis 47 tells us about his meeting with Pharaoh. Joseph presented his father, and Jacob, an aged shepherd who had walked through so many trials, blessed the king of Egypt. When Pharaoh asked him his age, Jacob replied, "The years of my pilgrimage are 130. My years have been few and difficult, and they do not equal the years of the pilgrimage of my fathers." Those words reveal a man who recognized both his struggles and God's grace in carrying him through. The last 17 years of Jacob's life in Egypt were different from what came before. Genesis 47:27-28 describes a time of stability and growth. Israel settled in Goshen, the family prospered, and Jacob lived until the age of 147. After decades of running, deceiving, wrestling, and grieving, he finally experienced peace. Before his death, Jacob passed blessings to the next generation. In Genesis 48, he adopts Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, granting them the inheritance of tribes. In a surprising twist, he crosses his hands, giving the younger son the greater blessing, just as God had once chosen him, the younger, over Esau. Genesis 49 then records his prophetic words over all 12 sons, words that shaped the destiny of the tribes of Israel. Some blessings were filled with promise, others with warnings. but together they formed the foundation of a nation. And then came his final instructions. Jacob asked to be buried in the cave of Machpelah, alongside Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, and Leah. When he finished speaking to his sons, Genesis 49 says he drew his feet up into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Joseph wept over him, kissed him, and ordered his body embalmed. The mourning in Egypt lasted 70 days, an extraordinary honor. His grand funeral procession back to Canaan, recorded in Genesis 50, marked not just the end of a patriarch, but the closing of an era. Jacob's life was never simple. He struggled, deceived, fled, and fought. He also loved, grieved, reconciled, and transformed. And through all of it, God's hand was at work, shaping him from Jacob the deceiver into Israel, the father of a nation. His story reminds us that our own flaws and struggles don't disqualify us. God can use even the most broken parts of our journey for His purposes. But let me ask you, what about you? Which moment in Jacob's story speaks most to your heart? Is it his wrestling with God, his reconciliation with Esau, or perhaps his final blessings over his sons? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so share them in the comments below. And if this video gave you something to reflect on, don't just keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who might need encouragement or a reminder that transformation is possible. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next episode in this series as we explore more biblical lives and the timeless lessons they carry for us today. Remember, just as God worked in Jacob's life, He wants to work in yours. Your story, with all its struggles and victories, can also be transformed by His grace. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.